Well, hello again, and welcome to another session of the 17th annual Transforming the Teaching and Learning Environment virtual conference. This year, we're sponsored by the Journal of Educators Online, and they have a session tomorrow at noon Central, probably about 20 minutes or so, talking about the journal, how you can participate in it, that kind of thing. It would make me happy if you take a few minutes to jump in tomorrow with them. It's on the schedule. We have with us Tom Cantu. Tom is an instructional designer in the Office of E-Learning, Innovation, and Teaching Excellence at Montgomery College in Maryland. Since 1998, he's been guiding college faculty in planning and building online and blended courses. He's got a master's degree in instructional systems development and is going to tell us today everything we need to know. So, Tom, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Bob. I appreciate it. Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well today. I hope you're staying warm. If you're comfortable turning on your camera, that would be awesome. That way I can read your faces and get some idea of how well things are going with the presentation. Anyone? Wonderful. Megan, Grace, good to see you. Tracy, Javier, if you're comfortable turning on your camera, it'd be wonderful to see you. So, Bob already, wonderful. Thank you, Javier. And welcome, Tracy. Thank you. So Bob already introduced me. I'm at Montgomery College in Maryland. It's a two-year college. And my primary role has been preparing faculty to teach fully online and blended courses since 2002 here at MC. Faculty build their own courses here. So we don't build them for them. Even though I'm an instructional designer, they build the courses. So my role is to guide them through planning and building an effective course that they are looking forward to teaching. So how many of you have taught or do teach online? Just raise your hand or type in chat, whatever you're comfortable with. Megan, do you teach online?
I'm an instructional designer also. I used to teach
Awesome.
in person before.
Good to know. Okay, Tracy, do you teach online?
I do. I teach a hybrid nursing course, multiple hybrid nursing courses.
Wonderful. Does anyone else teach blended, hybrid, or is it mostly online? Grace and Javier.
I'm an instructional designer as well. I do some online, facilitating of our training courses.
Got it. Okay, good to know. And Grace? You're muted.
I teach asynchronous online.
Good. And what's the course?
Teaching for teachers, teacher candidates.
Wonderful. So it's a teacher educator program?
Mhm.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Good to know. They're fun to teach. So let me share the PowerPoint because what I'm going to do is walk you through the process of backward design for online discussions. So rather than just talk to you about it, you can download the worksheet that I just threw into chat and open it up in Word, and I'll guide you through the process. And hopefully you'll find this useful for your own benefit, or for those of you, Megan and Javier, who are instructional designers. You can use any variation of it that you like with your faculty, or you may already have something that you already use, but I think you'll find the experience worthwhile. So does everyone now have the handout? Good. Grace, Tracy?
Yes.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Yeah. All right, so you've downloaded the worksheets. The PowerPoint is available online, and it was really big, so we had trouble putting it through this. Somehow I had too many images in the background. But Bob will show you where the link is, and you can download the PowerPoint. So as we begin, before I jump into the worksheets, what I'd like you to do is think of one specific course that you would like to think about and for which you would like to revise the discussion prompts in that course. And while you're doing that, think about when you teach that course in person, and think about some of your favorite teachable moments that naturally occur in person that you might find are missing from the online version of the course. Okay, fun with Zoom. I seem to have lost my video panel. There you are. Ha! Now I can see everyone. All right, good. Now I have my grounding. I can see. You know how it is. Every time you share, Word just throws things into, Zoom throws things into new directions. Okay, so here we are. Here I am. And all right, so does everyone have a course in mind? Would you go ahead and type the course that you would like to work on in chat? And Javier, if you can pick any course that you have worked on with a professor that you think, you know what, maybe this professor could do it a little bit better, and that would work out just fine. So my goal in these worksheets is to guide you through recrafting your online discussions by including certain key elements into those discussions so that they serve as scaffolding all semester long to prepare students for the performance needed on your final assessment. And it's a simple shift, but it's a powerful shift. And you'll see where backward design is the essence of that. Because my goal is to help you recreate your favorite teachable moments that occur so naturally in person. You know those moments when your students get it, when they're suddenly questioning and their minds are open, and you seize that moment to teach them in a way that is one of the most satisfying experiences of teaching. Many faculty feel that those moments are lost when they teach asynchronously, and I can help you to recreate them. So let's see, we have a nursing course, we have a doctorate of nursing course. Wonderful. Doctorate of nursing practitioner. Awesome. Okay, so I'll talk more about philosophy, intro to ethics. Yes, right, that's exactly it, because a philosophy course is heavily a dialogue course. And if that professor feels that the dialogue is missing, that professor is not having fun. And the contrast between what they enjoy so much in person and what they're sort of struggling through online is painful. So I hope this gives you some ideas to work with that professor to help them recreate what they enjoy so much in person in their asynchronous course. So thank you, Grace. Culturally and linguistically. Got it. So it's the teacher education course, teaching culturally and linguistically diverse students. Good. So there's a whole lot of cases and scenarios in that, I would imagine. You know, how would you handle this kind of good? Okay. And Kristen and Tracy. Tracy, welcome. Did you write down what, Tracy, there you are. The nursing process 1. Okay. Yeah. I hope, Tracy, that by the end of this, I'll convince you that adding some discussions can be a worthy endeavor.
That's what I'm looking forward to.
Awesome. And Kristen, did you have a course that you would like to work on? A course that you would like to adjust the discussions in that course?
I do have the discussions. I'm teaching medical terminology and human disease.
Got it. Wow. Okay, that's a tricky one. Anyway, so if anyone is also thinking about an on-campus or remote course, these same ideas apply there also. And it's 2 simple strategies that I get endless mileage out of: ante up, bringing them to class prepared, and kick off. So ante up is simply asking them to respond to anything. It could be a problem they have to solve. It could be an article, a video, a section of the chapter. It could be anything that you want them to respond to before class. Here's the beauty of this strategy if you're using it on campus or remote. you don't have to respond in the discussions. Because if it's an on-campus course, you may decide that that's beyond the scope of what you have time for. The key is that you simply review their responses before you show up to class to see where their thinking is on target and where the gaps are, or where the common misconceptions appear. And now you walk into class with a very targeted lecture discussion aimed at the common misconceptions or the gaps in their thinking. Kickoff is the same thing, only it occurs at the end of class when you give them a problem or a prompt or something that you want them. Everyone needs to respond before the next class. And there again, you get to review their thinking and walk into class with a very targeted lecture discussion aimed at the gaps or common misconceptions that appear. Okay? So between that, everyone has a course to work on. So let's talk you through 3 key elements, and they are the course goal, backward design, and disciplinary thinking. And if you have the handout, go ahead and open it up, and I'll talk you through it in a few minutes. But let me just kind of set things up first. So the 3 key elements are the course goal. Think of it this way. There are professors that have influenced you so much that something that they instilled in you lives in you to this day. Yes? Think of your favorite professor in undergrad or graduate experience. And I would bet there's something that professor inspired in you that lives to this day. I call it passing the 10-year test. What do you want your students to remember about your course 10 years from now? Because you know when someone really gets it. And the course goal is simply asking you to define, what does it mean when someone really gets it? All right. Backward design is designing backward from your course goal. If a student achieved your course goal in the way that you want them to, what would they know and be able to do? All right. And then the last one is disciplinary thinking, which kind of goes deep into the weeds, but it's actually really critical because every discipline, every course teaches a unique way of thinking. Every discipline has their unique methods of analysis and problem solving that are unique to the discipline. I tell this to my son all the time. Psychology deals with the individual. Sociology deals with large masses or groups of people. Anthropology, on the other hand, does something that was radical at the time. Instead of being a missionary and trying to convert people and change them, you go in and try to understand them as they understand themselves. That was a pretty radical idea for its time. But you see how every discipline has a unique way of looking at the world. That's disciplinary thinking. What I'm going to ask you to do in the worksheets is to define it so that you can teach it even more deliberately than you already do. Because when you define these 3 elements, any of these 3 or all of the 3 enable you to create discussion activities that become scaffolding all semester long, getting students to teach, practice, and assess. Getting students to practice the skills that you want them to learn. So in essence, every discussion becomes an opportunity to teach, to practice, and to assess the thinking that you want to see on the final assessment. Okay? So when you do that kind of backward design, the discussions take on a whole new purpose. When you do that, what you get is the effective classroom assessment techniques on steroids. So I'll put it simply. When your discussions are well crafted, you get to see every student's thinking revealed in writing several times per week. Think about that. You get to see every student's thinking revealed in writing several times per week. Properly used, that is like classroom assessment techniques on steroids. It is the equivalent of what you do so naturally in class when you're checking their eyes, checking their body language to see how well they're getting it and where you need to pause and reteach. All right. And when you do that, when you see into their thinking and it reveals what you actually want to know, like Grace, think about formative assessment techniques, that is your opportunity to recreate your favorite teachable moments. Because the fact is, the content that you're teaching is the same content that you're teaching in person. So the same sticking points, the same questions, the same teachable moments will occur in the online course also. The point is to intentionally recreate those teachable moments. And you can craft your discussions to draw out those common misconceptions that you know students have, those common questions that you know students struggle with. All those sticking points are the same because the content is the same. All you're doing now is structuring your discussions to deliberately target them. And when you do that, you begin to recreate the classroom experience. So think about your philosophy professor, Javier. The more he creates those favorite moments where students light up and he can see that they're starting to get it, they're starting to ask really good questions, the more he can recreate those same experiences online, the more he's going to have fun with it. And the fact is, one of my favorite techniques, Javier, is when I'm working with faculty is I will simply ask them, tell me how you teach this in person. And when they do, and I see that they positively lit up because they're enjoying what they do in person so much, I simply find a way to translate that for asynchronous delivery, which is still largely the same. It's just the time has shifted, right? And of course, the goal is to make it fun again. Because you get to see into their minds. So, kind of jumped the gun there. All right, so everybody has a course that you're going to work on. We've talked about the key elements. My goal is to take you from this, or to take any of the professors from this, where you're not having fun, to this, where you are having fun. Because professors love teaching. You have to. And I would argue that teaching online can be just as much fun. It's just that it's in a different time frame. All right. So one of my favorite quotes is all of physics is either impossible or trivial. All of physics is either impossible or trivial. It's impossible until you understand it, and then it becomes trivial. And I feel the same way with many professors about the shift from how do I go from teaching in person to teaching asynchronously? And when they finally understand how it can work, they're back in their comfort zone. And that's where I want them to be. So let's take a quick tour through the worksheets. Does everybody have them? Does anybody need the worksheet? Like Tracy, I don't remember if you, let's see. Here, I just threw it into chat. So if anyone doesn't have the worksheet, actually let me know if you have the worksheet.
I have it.
Everyone? Okay, Kristen, everyone has it? Open up in Word?
Yes, I'm
Perfect.
fine.
All right. So take a look at page 1 because I'm going to talk you through an example and then I'm going to guide you through it. And I'm just going to hit on some highlights because I really want to get you into writing. So my primary role is the online teaching training. I guide faculty through planning and building and preparing to teach their own online and blended courses. And as I've already mentioned, I help them through that mind shift from how on earth do I teach asynchronously and never see my students to getting them to the point where they are back in their comfort zone and realizing that good teaching is good teaching and asynchronous teaching is still teaching. It's just slightly different in the timing of it. So page 1 is the course goal. And let me show you an example as we kind of talk through it, and then I'll have you actually do it. So the course goal, my goal for the online teaching training is that their first experience teaching online is a good one. Now think about it. I get them for a 7-week fully online course in which I guide them through planning, building, and preparing to teach their course. But they don't build a 15-week course. They build one module, as well as the syllabus, the schedule, the orientation, and a bunch of other stuff. The goal is that one module, they do the endless polishing and revising until it becomes a model and a set of page templates for building the rest of the course. So they take my course in one semester, a 7-week fully online course. They usually spend a second semester building the course, and then in a third semester, they go teach it. So how much control do I have over their first experience teaching online is a good one? So does that seem like a castle in the sky kind of goal? It's certainly not an objective, right? It's not measurable, Grace. It doesn't meet any of those measurable standards. But nonetheless, my goal is that their first experience teaching online is a good one, and everything I do is aimed at that. So one of my favorite quotes by Henry David Thoreau: "If you have built castles in the air, your work need not be lost." That is where they should be. Now put the foundations under them. So that's what backward design does. It takes that castle in the sky kind of goal, I want your first experience teaching online to be a good one, and begins to operationalize it. If my students had achieved that goal, what would they know? And what would they be able to do? See it? And so in my course, this is my goal, and I'll spare you the details, but it comes down to I guide them through planning, building, and preparing to teach their own course until they are back in their comfort zone. They have a model, a module that serves as a model for building the rest. And the most important piece to me is that they're smiling. Because when the professor is smiling, that internal sense of, yeah, this is going to work, is in high gear, and it all lines up, and they are confident that it's likely to work. If the professor is not smiling in any way, I will meet with them again and again if necessary until all the pieces line up and they see this is going to work. Because that's my goal, is that your first experience teaching online is a good one. And if they leave my course smiling and looking forward to teaching their course, I'm pretty confident that's going to happen. So let's take a look at page 2 of the handout, which is the backward design piece. The backward design piece. And backward design is simply, if they achieved my goal, what would they know and what would they be able to do? And I'll spare you the details, but take a look at the very last one, attitudes. If they don't believe it can work, they're not motivated to continue. This is why I get them. I'm not done working with them until they're smiling. Because once they're smiling, they believe it can work. And they're reasonably confident that it's going to, even though it's a semester or two away. All right. And then finally, if you look at page 3 of the handout, disciplinary thinking. So disciplinary thinking is the unique methods of analysis and problem solving that are unique to your discipline and the course that you're teaching. And in my course, it comes down to a few key points. And one of them is that first bullet, learn to create community. And one of the simplest ways of doing that is, wherever appropriate, have students post their work in the discussion area. Because now it completely changes the dynamics of the course. Instead of you spending all your time in individual grading, the audience is now all of their peers. They learn from each other. And you can even use the option to have them post first before they can see anyone else's work, if that's appropriate and if it helps. But wherever appropriate, have them post their work in the discussions. It completely changes the dynamics of the course. And it shifts it away from a correspondence course to a learning community. All right. And then finally, number 4, which is page 4 of the handout, putting it all together, my discussion that I aim for is that I'm constantly using the discussions to draw out the common misconceptions that I know almost every professor has when they're trying to shift to developing an asynchronous online course. And more importantly, I want them to experience online learning as a robust learning community. I can't tell you the number of faculty I meet who tell me that their graduate level program as a fully online program was all hit and run learning. Students came in, they posted, they got their points, and they never showed up until the end of the week or the next week. Hit and run learning. And unfortunately, the professor was doing the same thing in many cases. Online learning should be so much more. So when they experience it in my course, they believe it can work, and they're inspired to do it in whatever way is appropriate in their course. All right, so let's get you into the worksheets because that's where the fun is. Yeah. I'm going to skip through the second example. It's in the PowerPoint. Let's go straight to the course goal. And I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to write on each of these pages. So, whoops. There we are. Backward is, sorry. Hold on, lost my place. There we are, the course goal. So take a look at page 1. You know how it works. There's something that students catch from being in the presence of a dedicated professor. You've experienced it in your own undergraduate or graduate experience, that professor who utterly inspires you. You see it in their eyes, you see it in their work. I call it passing the 10-year test. What is it that you want students to remember about your course 10 years from now? And you'll see where there's 2 different ways of asking the question. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to go ahead and answer it. And then I'll ask you to post your draft of your course goal in the discussion area. I'm sorry, in the chat, so we can all share it. Ready? Start typing. Setting the timer now.
I need to have the Jeopardy theme playing right now.
That's right. All right, 30 seconds left. The goal is when you read that statement, it makes you smile. Ten seconds left. Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, so if you're comfortable doing so, I would ask you to post your course goal in the chat so we can see what you consider to be the 10-year test or what the most essential thing is that you want students to get in your course. And if you could also include the course title, that would help us to orient or to put together the course and your goal. Ah, there it is. Demonstrate an understanding of the patient evaluation and treatment process by analyzing information gathered to formulate a diagnosis and treatment plan. Yes, absolutely. Because if they achieve that, they're ready to become professionals, or at least starting level professionals. Depending on, is this a graduate level course? It's a doctoral level course.
Yeah, doctoral level.
Yeah, so they're already probably professionals.
Right.
So I would ask you then, is there some particular quality to the diagnosis and treatment that you know a highly skilled person has and some others may or may not?
Well, I think the main thing with this course is it does actually have a hands-on in-person component. So I think the kind of culminating factor of it will be a memorable hands-on, interaction with patients, so or with a case study, I guess. But yeah, I'm sure that could be that final like evaluate and treatment plan could be defined a little bit more or put a little bit more excitingly.
So, and where I'm going with this is that actually sounds like a wonderful final course outcome, because that certainly describes the skills that you want them to have and be able to demonstrate by the end of the course. And I'm asking you if, as a 10-year test, is there something that would inspire them to become an awesome practitioner as opposed to just a practitioner? So Grace should be able to reflect, plan instruction, and design learning experiences for all students using developmentally, linguistically, culturally appropriate learning activities. God, that is such an awesome goal. Yes, and being able to put all of that together, including the full range of English language of English learners. Wow, that is a really complex goal. I love it. Javier, analyze your own ethical thinking for the ideas and values that they believe. Yes, and justify it. Beautiful. And I can imagine that as a philosophy professor, he just thrives on that. Yeah, I knew a philosophy professor who spent the first like 4 weeks of the semester teaching the allegory of the cave and having students write a reflective paper about how that relates to their own lives. And he says it transforms them. They are just different people after they've written that paper. Is anyone else willing to share your course goal? Awesome. Tracy, thank you. Yes, the art and the science of nursing when caring for patients, and it certainly is both. Wonderful. Anyone else? Christine, if you're willing to share it, we welcome you into it. Awesome. Thank you. Right, right. And I've seen similar courses where the goal was to put it all together because it's just so much that they are being asked to learn. And being able to put it all together is actually something that students aren't very good at doing. They're good at memorizing the pieces, but not putting it all together into a fluid practice the way a skilled practitioner does. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing these. So as you continue to wordsmith this, there's that overriding question. Does it make you smile? And Javier, when I do this with professors, they literally go from looking constipated, like, that's not quite, and then suddenly they relax, like, yes, that's why I teach this course. That's why I love this course. And that then becomes the touchstone, the guiding compass heading for everything else that we do. Because I can, in an instant, when we're deep in the weeds developing a course, I can ask the professor, how well does this assignment serve to accomplish your course goal? And it's an awesome, quick, and instant alignment check that takes them out of the weeds and into the big picture. So keep wordsmithing your course goal until it absolutely makes you smile. Let's go on to the next page, because the backward design piece is to take your course goal. When students achieve it, what will they know? What will they be able to do? And yes, the answers will sound suspiciously like course objectives, because another way of thinking of it is, if a student, well, I already answered that. If a student achieved your course goal, what would they be able to do? Another way of thinking of it is, given an A student who really excelled and another student who didn't, what would that A student know and be able to do? And you can include both the knowledge and the skills and the attitudes if you wish. All right, so I'm gonna, let's start on page 2. I'm gonna set the timer for 3 minutes. So for example, Tracy, you talked about the art and science of nursing. There is a definite attitude component into being an awesome nurse. And it's not just a technical skill. All right, I'm gonna set the timer for 3 minutes and give you a minute to write. The second half of page 2 is optional. Knowledge, skills, and attitudes, just touch on it in whatever way makes sense to you. Setting the timer now, 3 minutes, go. And if you find that you've written all you need, feel free to go straight into page 3. How many of you have already completed page 2? Yeah, please feel free to roll right into page 3, because we're actually running short on time. So I'm going to extend the timer by another minute and just start on page 3 also. 15 seconds left. Okay, thank you. So, we only have a few minutes left, so I'm going to talk about a few additional details, and you'll end up revising your discussion prompt at a later time because that's actually going to take a good deal of wordsmithing. But my goal is that you have these three elements: the course goal, the backward design, what do you want them to know and be able to do if they had achieved when they achieve your course goal, and disciplinary thinking, the unique methods of analysis and problem solving that are being taught in your course and that you are asking students to display or demonstrate on your final assessment. Okay, so the goal is that you can frame your discussions as so that they serve as scaffolding all semester long to teach, practice, and assess disciplinary thinking and the kinds of thinking that you know they will need on the final assessment. So the discussions serve all semester long to bring them up to the level of performance that you're looking for at the end of the course. So with that in mind, let me just introduce a few additional considerations. So the first one is to provide lots of choice. So I have one discussion prompt that has 8 bulleted options. And every time I think it's too much, I remind myself they're only asked to pick one. And I'm frequently surprised at how people pick one that I never thought they would pick, and they run with it in a way that is such a pleasure to see. Give your learners choice. I have a wonderful article by Flower Darby, which says, an instructional designer extraordinaire, which says so many of the things that I say to faculty, and she says it just as beautifully in this wonderful article from the Chronicle of Higher Education. And in one of my discussions, I actually give them that article and tell them, pick your favorite principle and tell me why and how you plan to use it. Lots of choice. Okay. Second, progressive dialogue. How many of you have seen the time where professors just get mired in the thought that they have to come up with one discussion prompt that is big enough to last all week long? No. And here's why. When you teach Monday, Wednesday, Friday on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule, every class period is unique. And you can do the same thing with your online discussions. That's the purpose of the midweek deadline. So that by midweek, not only are students required to post their first response to the discussion, you then have an opportunity to pivot based upon what they wrote or based upon something you've already planned to the next topic or subtopic, and the next, and the next. Because if everybody posts their first response by the middle of the week, say Wednesday or Thursday, you can then post a follow-on question that gives them multiple options to respond. But by seeing their thinking in writing, you know which ways to go. You can compliment them on what they got right and target the gaps and common misconceptions directly. So thinking in terms of a Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule, at the very least a Tuesday, Thursday schedule, for most professors, this absolutely liberates their thinking because they no longer have to come up with one prompt that lasts all week. We've already talked about deadlines. You're all familiar with the midweek deadline. In some cases, like Javier, a philosophy course or a women's studies course or other courses that are very intensive, it's essentially a seminar. Those courses can work very well with 3 deadlines per week, using 2 midweek deadlines and then the final week, the final deadline at the end of the week, because there's so much going on. And that's where once you get professors to think, if you teach a seminar and you teach Monday, Wednesday, Friday, every class period's unique. So how would you do that online? And suddenly they just light up and start running with it. We've already talked about sharing your work in discussions. That is one of the most useful principles I've ever learned because it absolutely changes the dynamics of the course. And then finally, one of my favorite techniques is exit tickets adapted for online learning. So in the old days, they talked about the professor should summarize the discussion. What do you think of that? Yes, it's a good idea, but that's you doing all the work. My favorite variation of that is closing comments, or think of them as exit cards. Instead of you summarizing the discussion, get students to post their closing comments for this discussion. They don't have to summarize the whole thing. They can summarize key takeaways, key portions of it, take one theme and explain it, whatever it is, but get them to do the writing. Think of it as a variation of exit cards or closing comments. And I think you'll find that students are now doing the work, not the professor. All right, we have 2 minutes left. What questions do you have? Any thoughts about your course goal or the disciplinary thinking? So I have a couple of resources on planning online discussions. So if anyone needs a primer, these resources can be useful. And there's some resources on backward design and disciplinary thinking because it's such a rich area. And the course goal, this is straight out of Robert Mager's goal analysis. So those of you who are instructional designers, you're probably familiar with Robert Mager. He's one of my all-time favorite instructional designers. But yeah, it's straight out of Robert Mager's goal analysis. So in closing, continue to wordsmith your course goal, continue to think about how you define and get students to practice disciplinary thinking, because I think it's safe to say that all of you want to be the kind of professor that students remember 10 years from now. And I hope this helps you just take you a little bit further in that direction, because teaching is an awesome endeavor and it has to be fun, especially when you're teaching online. Thank you so much for your time. Bob, I know you have closing comments.
Wow, thank you. This was really good. I think everyone here would agree. So I thank you for taking the time to do this for us.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.